You owe the community since 1950. That's what she said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Right as I finished sanding the handrails on my porch, hands still sticky with varnish, and she drops a bill on my workbench, big enough to buy a used car. All for some legacy fees she claims are tied to my house. I mean, come on, I bought a mansion, not a time machine, you know what I mean? But that's how it started. One weird, official-looking letter after another. Each one more threatening. Each one dragging me further into this mess that smelled like fraud, but dressed itself up in tradition, polished, and official. It wasn't just wrong, it felt personal. Like they'd picked me out for something. If your HOA ever tried a stunt like this on you, tell me, would you just pay up or dig in your heels? Because let me tell you, the morning sun looked downright smug, bouncing off the fresh brass on my porch, while I tried to wrap my head around the fact that someone expected me to fork over $27,000 for some community debt that supposedly started decades before I was born. I'll admit, bringing this old 1920s house back to life had already cost me half my weekends and way more cash than I'd ever planned. But as I stood there, staring at the cedar shingles glowing in the sun and the porch I'd sweated over for months, I realized none of that work prepared me for the likes of Elaine Porter, self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood board, and all-around busybody. She showed up that morning with a folder hugged to her chest like a bulletproof vest, dressed in khaki slacks so starched you could slice bread with them, and a smile that said, "This is gonna hurt." "Good morning, Evan," she purred. Syrupy sweet, the kind of sweet that comes right before a slap. She made some offhand comment about my restoration work, then slid her folder onto the bench with a thud. Out came papers with bold letters, special assessment notice, and a number at the bottom that made my stomach flip, $27,000. For legacy dues. Back to 1950. What does that even mean? I remember flipping through the legalese, trying to find something that made sense. She had her speech down cold, talked about community obligations transferring with the property, about covenants and inherited responsibilities, referencing acts and organizations I'd never heard of. Sounded real official. But, you know, sometimes things can sound right and still be totally off. Wait a minute, I told her. This board started in 1996. I checked before I bought this place. How could I owe money to an organization that didn't exist yet? Her smile barely twitched, but I caught it, a little crack. The law is complex, Evan, she said. Obligations can transfer in many ways. You'll see everything is properly documented. Yeah, that happened. At some point, my hand wrapped around this old ceramic mug I'd found in the kitchen while cleaning out cupboards. It said, Fish Fry 1950, Voluntary Donations, painted in faded blue script. I held it up, half joking. So, looks like these legendary mid-century obligations were just donations. Her composure slipped a bit. She tried to take the mug, but I wasn't having it. Old artifacts don't always reflect current law, she sniffed. Records evolve to meet community needs. And that's when things started getting weird. As I held the mug, I heard the antique dinner bell beside my door chime. A soft, clear note, despite there being no breeze. I looked at Elaine. She pretended not to notice, started backing away. You have 30 days to pay, or arrange a payment plan. She tossed over her shoulder, already moving off the porch. How many people are you pulling this on? I called after her. All lakefront properties, she shot back. Tradition doesn't discriminate. Then she was gone. I stood there, the assessment in one hand, the mug in the other, and a growing sense that I'd just met the HOA equivalent of a used car salesman trying to unload a lemon. Associations can't just create debts out of thin air, right? And they can't charge for events that happened before most of us were even born. Still, something about the mug and the bell kept nagging at me. That afternoon, I dove headfirst into Michigan property statutes. The sun slanted through my windows as I pored over law books and online articles. Elaine probably thought I'd just roll over and pay, but what she didn't know is I have a stubborn streak, and I read contracts for fun. And, every so often, that bell would chime, just as I'd stumble onto another hole in her story. Maybe the old place had a sense of humor. Then the phone call started, first from a neighbor 2 doors down, then across the street, then the elderly couple on the corner, each with the same story. You get that crazy bill from Elaine? 7 families, all lakefront, $27,000 each, all with the same legal mumbo-jumbo about legacy fees. Multiply that, and you're looking at nearly $200,000 for debts that never existed. Digging through Michigan's legal code, it was clear. HOA fees have to be for actual community needs, approved by a vote, not some fairy tale about inherited obligations from ghost organizations. None of that happened. Every requirement was ignored. This was a scam, plain and simple. That's when Walt Harlan knocked on my door. Walt's been around since Eisenhower was in office. Folks say he practically built the street himself. He brought a faded invitation to the annual fish fry. 1952, cream-colored card, hand-drawn fish, and right there in the fine print, suggested donation. Pay what you can, all neighbors welcome. He grinned at me. My late wife saved everything. His eyes twinkled. Notice it doesn't say mandatory fees? Right then, Lily Carter strolled up, early 30s, fit, former HOA secretary before Elaine took over. Mind if I join? She asked, waving her phone. I quit when Elaine started pushing creative finances. Special assessments require a vote, a budget, 90-day notice. None of this happened. She scrolled through Michigan HOA regs for us. Anything over $5,000 needs a majority vote. You get a ballot. Walt and I just laughed. The dinner bell chimed again, clear as a church bell, as Lily listed off the violations. Maybe it was just old metal responding to sound, but I tell you, it felt like the house was on our side. And when Walt checked his invitation guest list, he saw only 4 families in 1950. Elaine was hitting 23 houses now with her made-up debts. Things snowballed from there. We all got final notices, the grace period cut in half, threats of liens, and legal action. Then the real nastiness started. A flyer on my mailbox with the delinquent addresses in bold and a note. Until resolved, participation in neighborhood activities is suspended. It was like a public shaming, 1950s style. The social pressure ramped up fast. The pool attendant blocked me at the gate, said I wasn't in good standing. Never mind I'd paid every actual due on time. It was the legacy charge. Next, a neighbor stopped by with an apology and an invitation, the annual barbecue. But Elaine had banned anyone with outstanding legacy fees. Walt lost dock access. Others lost trash pickup or wine club invites. The exclusion was textbook bullying, designed to break us down. But here's where Elaine miscalculated. Her campaign didn't divide us. It welded us together. Lily took point, rallying the 7 delinquents into one stubborn block. Neighbors started slipping me notes. One woman said her late husband, an attorney, would have called this a sham. Stay strong, she wrote. Even people who paid up or kept quiet started questioning her story. Walt dug up more history. Ledgers showing the fish fry never collected more than $100 a year, total. Donation jars with slips reading, "Thanks for including us." No mention of fees or obligations. Lily brought her old HOA files. Turns out Elaine's been running creative accounting since day one, shuffling funds, approving expenses without oversight, the works. Then, just as we were ready to file a formal complaint, Elaine tried to up the stakes. She showed up with a so-called inspector from the county, clipboard, badge, the whole costume. The guy couldn't produce a real ID. Lily recognized him as Elaine's brother-in-law, a failed contractor from Grand Rapids. Walt, who's seen every kind of county official in 70 years, nearly burst out laughing. That uniform wouldn't fool a third grader. The crowd that gathered saw through the act. The inspector bolted. Elaine's face. Man, I wish you could have seen it. The next day, we invoked the Michigan Homeowner Bill of Rights, forced a formal hearing. Elaine tried to dismiss it, but state law was on our side. Nearly the whole neighborhood showed up. She stuck to her script about inherited obligations, but when I stood and laid out the real law, Walt backed me up with history, and Lily explained every single violation. The mood turned. The treasurer, Mark Benson, finally cracked. Turns out, the legacy fees already brought in $47,000 from 3 families who paid before the rest of us dug in. Most of it spent on board enhancement expenses, conferences, training, all the trappings of power, not community needs. That's when a reporter caught wind. She dug up Elaine's history. 2 other Michigan neighborhoods, both left in chaos after special fees, vanished into thin air. She found public records showing Elaine bought into our neighborhood after years of researching vulnerable communities, minimal board oversight, elderly owners, big property values. It was all calculated. The Attorney General's office opened a fraud investigation. By the time the police rolled up with a search warrant, neighbors were watching from porches. They hauled out boxes of records, computers, and, incredibly, the missing original fish fry ledger, hidden inside the antique dinner bell Elaine had swiped from Walt's porch years before. Every page proved what we already knew. Voluntary donations, no mandatory fees, no inheritance, nothing but neighborly goodwill. 2 weeks later, Elaine faced criminal charges in 3 counties: consumer fraud, conspiracy, theft. The treasurer made a deal, returned every penny, with interest. Walt organized a proper fish fry for the first time in decades. No fees, just food, laughter, and a bell ringing for the right reasons. Standing by the lake as the sun set, I hung up a sign: Fish Fry, neighborly tradition since 1950. Voluntary again in 2024. The bell chimed, soft and proud, and I realized the real lesson. Truth doesn't shout. It just waits for someone to listen. If you made it this far, tell me what you would have done, or which part hit you the hardest. Tap that thanks button below if you want to see more stories that dig a little deeper. And hey, share this with someone who loves a good plot twist. You never know who's watching.